What's up, guys? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I wanted to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what's happening with NEO moving forward as we're seeing some new developments on its charts. And what you should be watching for as time goes on. But just know that I am not a financial planner. Make sure you take nothing I say as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button. It not only benefits me, but benefits the entire community as a whole. Anyways, as far as NEO and the markets go, there's obviously a downtrend that's being respected, but the market's barely at support, and so is NEO. So the question is, what's going to affect this as time goes on? What is my prediction for tomorrow? I'll be talking about that in this video. But for now, just know that NEO is technically making lower highs and lower lows, at least as of the last couple of weeks. And we have some gaps to fill all the way down towards the low fours. So you want to be very careful with this, as time goes on. So I'll talk more about the share price, even though it is looking a bit more bearish, and why this could lead to a big bounce in the markets later on. But for now, we're going to just focus on this. NEO became the official mobility partner of Berlin Fashion Week of 2025, so good news for them. This helps them get a lot more advertising and exposure, especially as they get very, very close to expanding in Europe. That's good news for them. They're setting themselves up for a very, very big future, and we're waiting to see when they officially become profitable. Still good news nonetheless. Goldman Sachs gave them a sell rating, which is so, not the best of news. But since then, there's been nothing else that's come out from their last rating. The price price ratio is dipping because NEO is losing some strength compared to the markets, and we tend to be green, only about 49% of the time historically on Mondays. So just keep that in mind. We also tend to see more volatility around 10 o'clock a.m. and also during the second to last hour of the day. So just keep that in mind. Besides that, there's nothing else that's too crazy that's coming out. Volume is only at about 41.5 million. That is technically below average. So just keep that in mind. And then as far as earnings and such go, just know that we start the week with more minor earnings, but then things become a lot more serious on Wednesday as we have JP Morgan Chase, Citi, BlackRock, Wells Fargo, and Goldman Sachs. Then for Thursday, we have TSMC announcing their earnings, United Health Group, Bank of America, Morgan Stanley, and more big banks. So keep that in mind. Earnings season is about to kick off going into this week, especially on Wednesday. And the last thing I want to say is that when it comes to our data, there's not much data coming out for Monday. We just have a couple of bill auctions at 11:30 a.m. But at 2 p.m., we have the PPI report. Sorry, not 2 p.m. On Tuesday, I meant to say Tuesday, we have the PPI report. And then for Wednesday, we have CPI data coming out. So CPI is going to be very big. It's going to be affecting the 10 and 20-year treasury yields and a bunch of other things like that that are going to be affecting the markets and how we view inflation. So there's going to be a lot of inflationary fears right now. We'll have to see how the inflationary numbers look as it's going to have a big effect on this market. So I'll be watching it very closely. Anyways, as far as NEO goes into tomorrow, we are looking a little bit more bearish on the 4-hour time frame as we lost that support around that 4.3 area. And then when you look at the daily, NEO also has some weakness right over here, especially as we have these gaps down here to fill. So I wouldn't be surprised if we try to see a little rebound into the 4.2s. But if we can't hold above those, we could be looking for a big rejection to start dumping back down towards this gap fill, back down to 3.94. We're technically, like I said before, on a downtrend, getting rejection after rejection after rejection. I think the odds are favoring us tipping towards that 3.94 to 4 area for a little bit more downside. So keep that in mind, guys. The odds do favor downside, and we're going to likely see that very, very soon. As far as SPY goes, I want to mention that there's a large head and shoulders on the daily. There's still a little bit of weakness here. One thing that's worth mentioning is that we're at this support between 577 and 579. There could be a temporary bounce coming tomorrow morning to hit the low 580s, around 583 to 585. But then there's no guarantee we're just going to continue to squeeze back up to where this gap is. We might actually push into the 585 area before getting a potential rejection. I think that there's going to be a risk of us dipping a little bit more overall in this trend. Despite that, I just want to say that we're approaching the inauguration of the next administration, and we have more data coming out that's going to affect this. And I think that it's going to depend a lot on earnings, but there's still the potential for a big bounce that's going to be coming later on. So I'm saying that we might be doing something like this where we see a bit more downside overall. Tomorrow we might see a little rebound like this on SPY, back up towards this resistance consolidation. We'll have to see how CPI and other factors affect us. If we get one more leg down like this towards like the low 570s, and then that could be setting us up for a nice bottom in this market for this thing to start to rally. Right back up towards our all-time highs again. So we're going to be watching to see if we get some kind of rally very soon. There might be another dip coming, but just keep that in mind. Tomorrow, look for a little rebound to about the 583 to 585 area. Then we'll see if we get a rejection after that to continue this dip. On ES, we have something very similar. Might be a small rebound before we continue to dip a little bit more. We still have not made this bottom yet towards the lower 5800s, but I think we're getting closer to where our bottom may end up being. So we could try to push for about the very, very low 5900 area, if not below that. And if we get a rejection of that, then we could be dipping closer to about the lower 5800s. Then we'll see if we get a bounce or not. For now, that's what I'm essentially anticipating. For Nvidia, we got a nice pump only to reject back down here. We need to try to get back above 138. Otherwise, we favor a move back down towards 133. I think we could be dipping closer to 133. We'll have to see if we get a bounce or not. Just keep that in mind, guys. There could be a small dip right over here. For Bitcoin, Bitcoin's consolidating, going back and forth between supply and demand. We have support around 94,000. We have resistance at 96,000, going back and forth. We may try to push for 96,000. We'll see if we get a rejection as we are technically making lower highs. There is also like a head and shoulders on Bitcoin, so I wouldn't be surprised if we push a bit and then get another rejection to continue this move down. But like I said before, the whole market's going to get a big bounce eventually. It may take a couple of weeks to get there, depending on some factors. But for the short term, if we do make a move like this, right, if Bitcoin does kind of push into this resistance in the 96,000 area and we get another rejection to make a lower high, this is going to be a buying opportunity, these low levels, before we get another potential bounce later on. Just keep that in mind, guys. That could be what's about to come to the markets very soon. As far as Tesla goes, it's doing a lot better than the market because it's holding its support technically. This support is actually for the 4 hour, not the daily. So if you look at the 4 hour, we're riding this trend line. So as long as we hold this, we want to get back above 402. This gives it a lot more upside potential. For Nvidia, we're technically on a downtrend. We're making lower highs, as you guys can tell, lower highs and lower lows. But here's the thing about this. Did I say Nvidia? Sorry, I think I meant NQ. I think that this could be dipping a little bit more to about 21,000, 20,800 or below. But once we hit this support zone right here, which is where we like to bottom, I think this will try to get a bounce. So there might be a little rebound right here into the 21,200 area. Then it may continue to dump all the way down to 20,800 or below. So there might be one more pop and drop that's coming, but then this will eventually bottom very soon. So I'm going to be talking about that very soon. Coin and the QQQ are all like have very, very similar patterns. We're seeing the QQQ continuing to dump right here and might make its way down towards these lower levels. Look for a rebound tomorrow into the 510 zone. And if we can't hold above that, we could still reject and continue to fall. And this could eventually make its way down to the lower like 500s. That's still a possibility. But even if we do hit the low 500s, I still think there's going to be a big bounce coming once we break out of this trend line. I think that will eventually happen. This is just a pullback for now. This is not necessarily a crash. Apple's dipping quite a bit. It's going to attempt to rebound back up close to 240 tomorrow. And if you get a rejection off that, then yes, it could continue to dip a little bit more as we approach previous resistance becoming support again, back around the 233 to 230 area. So look for a retest of 240, see if we get a rejection to dip a little bit lower. Then we'll have to see if we get a bounce from there. For the Russell 2000, we're on a downtrend technically on the 4 hour time frame, but I also think this is going to base soon. So just for tomorrow specifically, we're going to be looking for a little rebound. I think that this will attempt to retest 218. And then after that happens, we'll see if we get a rejection back down towards these lows and we get one more leg down. We might eventually start dipping close to about the 215 area way down here, if not below that, before this thing tries to bounce. Just keep that in mind. For coin, we're technically a little bit more bearish, making lower highs. We have to try to get back above 270, unless we favor a move back down to about 246 before it tries to bounce. Amazon's technically on a downtrend, so it might get closer to about 215 by the time it officially gets a bounce. So look for a 220 test, and if you get a rejection, we're looking for 215. For Meta has a double top. It has like a nice range right here. So you have this resistance to watch for around this 618 area, and then we'll have to see if we get a rejection back down to 612. So watch those levels very closely. Look for a bounce for 618 tomorrow. I think Microsoft may try to rebound for essentially 422. Then we'll see if we get a rejection off of that. And Google may also consolidate right here, but I think there's going to be a risk of a bit more downside. It might retest 194 before it rejects. Still looks a little bit weaker than Microsoft and the others. So going back to Neo, I know I've been talking about like every other ticker, but just just know that for the short term we are looking bearish. I think that this may attempt a small rebound for about the 4.2s, but then we could reject and continue to fall closer to about 4 flats because the daily and the weekly are looking quite weak. We could get a much bigger bounce later on as we approach some big events, but we're not ready yet for the big bounce. And for now, we are looking a bit more bearish. So look for a retest of 4.3. We'll see if we get a rejection for there. Then we'll be watching some key levels. With that being said, I thank you all so much for listening. Have a good rest of your day. Enjoy the weekend, guys, and I'll be back with another update going into tomorrow morning before market open. or not tomorrow after market. It's going to be after market open, not beforehand. So sorry about that. I'll be back after market open and after market close tomorrow. So I'll see you guys then. Until then, have a good rest of your day and peace out.